I would like to welcome the audience to the November 15th, 2016 Parish Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Would you all please stand while Coach Williams says the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear gracious Lord, I come again thanking you for all your blessings. We thank you most of all for your suffering and dying, shedding blood for our sins. We thank you, Lord, for all of the many blessings for which you have stored upon us. We thank you for life, health, and strength. We thank you for this meeting. We thank you for the board. We thank you for the staff. We thank you for all of those who have come to seek some information, not only information, but some guidance from this board. And we pray for our country as a whole. We pray for our national office, our president-elect. And let us understand that this is the month for which we celebrate as Thanksgiving, but let us understand that we must give thanks for every day, for our lives and every month. And we pray, Lord, that you guide us and lead us. And when we stray to the away from you, we ask that you get us back on the right path. And we pray for those that are not here for whatever reason, and those who are sick and suffering throughout this land. And we offer this as our prayer this night. Amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Miss Christie, would you please call the roll?
Chair Jake Porche.
Here.
Vice Chair Art Little.
Here.
Mr. Randy Armator.
Here.
Miss Betty Brown.
Here.
Miss Julia Dickerson.
Here.
Miss Sharon Galicia.
Here.
Mr. Kyle Link.
Here.
Mr. Gary Navarre. He's absent. Mr. Kirk Smith.
Here.
Mr. LaSalle Williams.
Here.
And Miss Latricia Cobb is absent also.
Thank you, Miss Christie. I'd like to acknowledge we have an elected official present. Mr. Judd Bears is here with us. Appreciate you being here. This is an 11-member board. It will take a majority of those members present to grant or deny any requests heard tonight. The chair will refrain from voting unless there is a tie. The meeting will be conducted with me reading the request from the agenda. The planning staff will give a presentation and report their recommendations. If the applicant would like to add to the staff's presentation, or if someone from the audience has comments, please come to the microphone and state your name, address, and the nature of your request. All persons wishing to speak other than the applicants need to fill out a blue request to appear form located in the back of the room. This form must be given to the staff member prior to the reading of that particular agenda item. As required by this board's bylaws, in all cases, the proponents will be limited to 10 minutes. Opponents will be granted 10 minutes as well, with each speaker allowed no more than 3 minutes. I recommend that a spokesperson be selected if there's a large group wanting to speak on the same agenda item. If 4 or more speaker request forms are submitted, the time allotted for individual speakers will be limited based upon the number of forms submitted. The chair has the right to limit speakers who present redundant information or personal attacks on the board. In unique situations, the chair may extend, or the board may vote to extend the time allotted for the speakers. After discussion, the board will vote on each request. I will announce the decision of the board after the vote. The zoning exceptions, variances, and preliminary subdivision approvals are final tonight. The easement, abandonment, and rezoning cases will go before the police jury for final action on November 17, 2016. This meeting is being taped by the Calcasieu Parish Government Channel and can be viewed on Wednesday and Thursday following the meeting. For additional run dates, check the website at www.cppj.net. Channel 5 in Lake Charles, Sulphur, Moss Bluff, Westlake, Benton, DeQuincy, and Gillis. Channel 99 in Carlos and Grand Lake. At this time, I would ask that everyone please turn off all of your electronic devices or any noise-making devices. Moving to agenda item 5, take appropriate action on a request by Shell Investment LLC for preliminary subdivision approval to allow a single-family residential subdivision, 17 lots in Shellwood Estates in the 600 block of Route 66 in Ward 6. I will entertain a motion for approval with the stipulations.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Brown. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Dickerson. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located north of Sulphur and encompasses 20 acres of agricultural zone land. If approved, the development will consist of 17 one-acre lots for construction of single-family houses. The lots will have public water and individual wastewater treatment. Because the development meets the minimum standards, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following stipulations: that the development is subject to an application for and/or compliance with an LPDES stormwater discharge permit, which may be required through the Department of Environmental Quality and the Calcasieu Parish Division of Planning and Development, that a drainage impact analysis and a traffic impact analysis will be required unless appropriate waivers are granted by the Division of Engineering, and that the preliminary plat must be approved by the Division of Engineering prior to submittal of engineering plans.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? If so, you may come to the podium at this time. State your name and address.
Sir, my name is Larry Boyd, DeRidder, Louisiana, 13523 Highway 1146. That's my home address. The subdivision, as you know, everything changes. We started out at 18, 19 lots. We've then whittled it down to 16 now, not 17. We found out that we are dedicating 1 acre to a retention pond. So our outfall will be right on Route 66. So it will be 16 lots, not 17. That's all I wanted to add. And they're 1 acre lots. They're really decent sized lots. So it's going to be something nice.
All right, thank you. Any questions by the board for Mr. Boyd? Thank you, sir. You may be seated. Any questions or comments by the board? Seeing no opposition, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 5 passes. Item 6, take appropriate action on a case by Aerosol LLC for preliminary subdivision approval to allow a single-family residential subdivision, 38 lots in Waterside Subdivision Phase 2 in the 5500 block of Waterside Drive in Ward 3. I will entertain a motion for approval with the stipulations.
So move.
Motion by Mr. Little. Need a second?
Second.
By Mr. Smith. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located southeast of Lake Charles and encompasses nearly 49 acres of agricultural zone land. If approved, the development will consist of 38 one-acre lots for construction of single-family houses. The lots will have private water wells and individual wastewater treatment. Because the development meets the minimum standards, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the same 3 stipulations that were read into the record on the previous item.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? If you,
No, I don't. I'd just be happy to address any questions by the board.
thank you, sir. Any questions or comments for the applicant? Any questions or general comments from the board? All right, seeing no opposition, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 6 passes. Item 7, take appropriate action on case EA 01-001-16, a request by Martin Ritchie to abandon and revoke the original dedication of drainage and maintenance easements through Lot 24 at 1911 Wrestling Drive in Ward 1. I will entertain a motion for approval.
So move.
Motion by Coach Williams,
Second.
second by Ms. Dickerson. Ms. Wallace.
In 2004, the police jury adopted the Vineyard subdivision, which included a drainage and maintenance easement through Lot 24. The location of the easements limited the options for development on the lot. The current owners worked out an agreement with the Gravity Drainage District to relocate the easements to allow development of the lot. And because the Gravity Drainage District, which is number 8 of Ward 1, has approved the relocation of the drainage and maintenance easement, the staff recommends that the request be granted.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? If so, you may come to the podium at this time.
No, sir.
All right. Questions or comments by the board? We do have one blue card just for general comments. Mr. Paul Bonin, come to the podium at this.
I put the wrong number. It's supposed to be number 6.
Okay. Well, you missed your opportunity. Okay, any questions or comments by the board? Seeing no opposition, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 7 passes. Item 8, take appropriate action on case VA 02-040-16, a request by Joseph Crochet for a variance to allow 2 dwellings on 1 lot on 4226 Manchester Road in Ward 2. I will entertain a motion for approval with the stipulations.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Armitage
Second.
and a second by Ms. Dickerson and Ms. Galicia.
Doesn't matter.
Ms. Wallace.
This property is located in the Manchester area and encompasses 1.3 acres of agricultural zone land with 209 feet of road frontage. The petitioners reside in a house on the property. They would like to locate a new manufactured home on the property to serve as their daughter's residence. To be permitted by right for the second dwelling, the land would need to be at least 2 acres with 250 feet of road frontage. Because minimal impacts are to be expected, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following stipulations: that the development adhere to the site plan on file with the division, provided that the director may authorize adjustments to site plans in light of technical or engineering considerations, and that the manufactured home must be skirted prior to utilities being connected.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? If so, you may come to the podium at this time. Okay. Any questions or comments by the board? Seeing no opposition, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 8 passes. Item 9, take appropriate action on case VA 06-041-16, a request by Elizabeth Price Dickerson for a variance to allow 2 dwellings on 1 lot at 594 Dublin Lane in Ward 6. I will entertain a motion for approval with the stipulations.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Galicia. Need a second. Second by Mr. Link. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located north of Sulphur and encompasses .87 acres of agricultural zone land. The petitioner's son resides in a manufactured home on the property. The petitioner has located a new manufactured home on the lot to serve as her residence. Due to health issues, she needs to be close to her son. To be allowed to have the second manufactured home by right, 2 acres of land is needed. Because this is a hardship situation, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the same 2 stipulations that were read into the record on the previous item.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. If the applicant would like to add to the staff's presentation, you may come to the podium at this time. Okay. Any questions or comments by the board? Seeing no opposition, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 9 passes. Item 10, take appropriate action on case EX 03-032-16, a request by Corky Jones for an exception to allow residential development, a manufactured home, in the 5800 block of Landry Road in Ward 3. I will entertain a motion for approval with the stipulations.
Moved.
Motion by Mr. Little and a second by Ms. Galicia. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located south of Lake Charles and encompasses 1.13 acres of single-family residential zone land. The petitioner would like to locate a new manufactured home at the site to serve as his residence. Because there are similar developments in the immediate area and properties in the neighborhood that would be allowed where the manufactured home would be allowed by right, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the same 2 stipulations that were read into the record for the previous 2 items.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? Okay, I don't see anyone. Any questions or comments by the board? Seeing no opposition, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 10 passes. Item 11, take appropriate action on case EX 04-033-16, a request by Drew Stacy for an exception to allow residential development, recreational vehicle, in the 1700 block of Golden Road in Ward 4. I will entertain a motion for approval with the stipulations.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Little, second by Mr. Link. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located in Carlos and encompasses nearly 9 acres of single-family residential zone land. The petitioners have received an administrative approval to excavate a borrow pit at this site, and they plan to obtain a permit to construct a home within the next 6 months. They would like to place an RV on the property to serve as their temporary residence during construction of the home, RVs for temporary use are not allowed by right in R1 zoning, but this temporary use would be allowed by right on the adjacent agricultural zone property, and because of this, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following stipulations: that the development adhere to the site plan on file, provided that the director can authorize adjustments, that a permit for the recreational vehicle and the new home construction must be obtained simultaneously, and that the new home construction must be complete within 2 years of zoning approval.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? Okay. Any questions or comments by the board? Seeing no opposition, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 11 passes. Item 12, take appropriate action on case VA 04-048-16, a request by Drew Stacy for a variance to allow an accessory building prior to the main dwelling in the 1700 block of Golden Road in Ward 4. I will entertain a motion for approval with the stipulations. Motion by Mr. Little and a second by Ms. Dickerson. Ms. Wallace.
This is the same property discussed in the previous request. Should this particular request be approved, the petitioners plan to obtain permits to construct the accessory building as soon as possible. Because this request would be allowed by right on adjacent property, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following stipulations: that the development adhere to the site plan on file, and that the main dwelling must be complete within 2 years of zoning approval.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? Questions or comments by the board? Seeing no opposition, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 12 passes. Item 13, take appropriate action on case EX 04-034-16, a request by West Family Irrevocable Trust for an exception to allow borrow pits, 2 pits totaling 39 acres at 3335 Ellis Moss Road in Ward 4. I will entertain a motion for approval with the stipulations.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Brown and a second by Mr. Link. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located in Carlos and encompasses 63 acres of agricultural zone land. Upon completion of the proposed pits, the ponds will be stocked and will be for personal use only. Because minimal impacts are to be expected, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following stipulations: that the development must be in accordance with Section 26-1221F4 of the Parish Code of Ordinances, and that permitting is subject to a letter of no objection from the owner of the electrical transmission lines, and that a bond in the amount of $800,000 must be submitted to the Division of Engineering prior to issuance of a development permit.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? No, sir. Thank you. Any questions or comments by the board? Seeing no opposition, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 13 passes. Item 14, we do have 3 blue cards in opposition for item 14. Take appropriate action on case RZ 03-056-16, a request by Nison's Landing LLC to rezone from agricultural A1 to recreational vehicle park to allow a recreational vehicle park 63 spaces at 8878 Gulf Highway in Ward 3. I will entertain a motion for approval with the stipulations.
So moved.
Motion by Coach Williams, second by Mr. Link. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located south of Lake Charles and encompasses 13 acres of land. If approved, the petitioners plan to utilize the existing drives off Gulf Highway to access the park. The park will include a large area reserved for recreational use and a permanent structure serving as an office, laundry, and bathing facility. Because minimal impacts are to be expected, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following stipulations: that the development adhere to the site plan on file with the division, provided that the director may authorize adjustments to site plans, that all exterior lighting must be oriented inward toward the development or structures to minimize intrusion onto surrounding properties, that a drainage impact analysis will be required unless appropriate waiver is granted by the Division of Engineering, that permitting is subject to approval from the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development, and that RV park model types are prohibited.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. The applicant.
Hi, I'm Justin Nyson. I live at 171 St. George Road in Shreveport, Louisiana. We're proposing to build a luxury RV park. which would consist of all cement pads, driveways throughout. There's not going to be any gravel. We're going to do heavy amenities. We'll have a walking track. We'd like to build a pavilion by the bayou, build a boat launch for public use to access the bayou, barbecue pits along the bayou area. We also intend on building a small splash pad, similar to what you see around Lake Charles, for the families that have kids that go to the park. So this will be a luxury RV park. And, yeah, I guess that would be all, you know. I mean, this is going to be heavy amenities, a luxury place, somewhere that we're going to bring people into the town, a destination park, if you will, for families.
All right.
And that's what we're proposing to build there.
Any questions for Mr. Nyson? Thank you, sir.
Thank
May
you.
be seated. This time, I call Christine Seward.
My name is Christine Seward. I live at 562 West Friesen Road. First, I'd ask for all of the people that are here in opposition to please stand or raise your hand. We have over 110 signed signatures on a petition opposing this RV park. There's 100 reasons why. I know I need to keep it short. Most and foremost important is traffic. Gulf Highway cannot handle additional traffic. My son personally has been involved in 2 major accidents on Gulf Highway within 3 miles of my home in the past 12 months. It's just extremely fast-paced road. They're proposing to have the entrance and the exit off of Gulf Highway. And we had a meeting, last week, with Mr. Nyson. He proposed his plan to us. We listened to him. I was also told by my police director that that could possibly be changed when it goes to traffic study. And if that were to happen, then that would turn the entrance and the exit off of Friesen Road, which can't happen. You basically have people that live here who we don't know who they are. He's proposing as a weekend getaway. So you have people who could be registered sex offenders, who this is not their permanent residence, so they're not registered, we don't know they're there. You can have criminals. I mean, there's a 100 safety reasons why it's not okay with us. The noise would be a nuisance. The lighting, we would have to pass this every single day at a minimum of twice a day. It's literally 0.4 miles from my front door. I bought in the country because I wanted to live in the country. Recently purchased 4 acres in my backyard to secure that property. So it's something that we're all very opposed to. He also proposes as a luxury RV park. His plan has 30 amp hookups. From what I understand, the luxury RVs that are bigger require 50. So there's a lot of ifs when we met with them. There was a lot of unsureties. There was a lot of questions. So we're really not in favor of this at all.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Seward?
Thank
May
you.
be seated. Tyler Nugent. Your name and address for the record, sir.
My name is Tyler Nugent. I'm at 540 West Friesen. We purchased our land, my wife and I, on March the 15th of 2016 with the full intention of developing a residential property for ourselves. We planned on growing a family, preferably there for many generations. We purchased the property well before an RV park was ever thought of. Our land is joining the Nyson's property by 1,432 feet, joins their property. We had no intention of purchasing a piece of land with the intention of stepping out our front door and looking over to 50-plus RVs less than 50 feet away. We had to build our property up 4 feet of a dirt pad, which was 5 inches over what the new laws and new regulations were, in order to be permitted to build a residential house there. We were approved to change the property that we bought from an agricultural property to a residential property here. We simply asked for consistency in the neighborhood. Many people that I've spoken to, they purchased their land years and years ago with the thought of this is where they want to grow a family and this is where they want to live for many, many years to come. They had no intention of being next to temporary owners, or in this case, temporary RV owners, so close, right next door. And especially for us, it being 50 feet away from where we have already begun the process of building our home. We began this process and we had no idea that this was the case. It wasn't even a thought to anybody in our neighborhood. Nobody knew anything about this development possibility of an RV park. We just asked that, as a whole, as a community, we ask that you don't pass this rezoning. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Nugent? Thank you, sir. You may be seated. Michelle Rocca?
Good evening. My name is Michelle Rocca. I live at 8928 Booker Street. It's approximately 400 feet away from this proposed RV park. I'm going to be really blunt and really quick, so if I talk too fast, just let me know in respect of your time and those here. On behalf of the people who could not be here, there's a lot that had to work and had school and could not be. The majority of the people, all of the people, everyone I have talked to is totally against this RV park. I'm going to try to explain to you adequately why. When we bought there, like everyone else who bought around this area, it's country. It is what we wanted to live, the way we wanted to live. We bought there for a reason. It was zoned agricultural. We wanted to be there. We didn't want to be where people were on top of each other and noise pollution. We wanted that lifestyle where we can go out on our porches at 8 p.m. at night and enjoy the quiet and hear the cows moo down the road and the roosters crow. Real quick, I'm going to run through some things. It's not consistent with the surroundings. We have farmland. We have pasture. We have residential family forever homes. I personally have spent a small fortune making my backyard a little oasis that if this RV park passes will be polluted with noise and traffic. Compared to an RV park environment, which I do have an RV and I choose to go to RV parks, the first thing they will tell you when you get an RV, make sure and bring earplugs and visors for your eyes at night, eye masks, because it is loud. This is not a business that's going to close down at 5 or 6. This is going to be, most RV parks have a 10 p.m. quiet rule. There's still traffic going in and out all times of the night, and it's loud. There are dogs, there are children. He has proposed to have an amphitheater, splash park. 80% of people who RV bring their pets. There are outside TVs in these luxury RVs. So you imagine 63 of them playing at once. 63 RVs, how many kids is that at the splash park? A bar, there's 24/7 traffic. It's just a different environment than what we are used to and what we desire. And like I said, we have built our forever homes here. We hope to attract other people to build their forever family homes here. The cost of our homes are going to plummet. We're going to lose property value because of this. Our taxes were assessed last year, reassessed, and they doubled. So I'm going to pay these high taxes, but my property value is going to go down. Let's just be honest with each other. This is going to affect our pockets. This is what I'm fixing to say is no jab at Mr. Nyssen. I'm worried about presentation and this being an eyesore. He did state he had a successful business, rentals on Gulf Highway, and I went to look at them. They are in disrepair. I don't want to say anything against him personally. I'm just worried that this, in 4 years from now, 3 years from now, what's this going to look like? Is he going to keep it up as compared to his other successful business? Pollution, there was talk at the meeting about in the 70s there were barrels buried with contaminated waste in them. What happens when he's digging this retention pond? It was asked of him, and he hits one of these things, and there's pollution and contamination. I have no clue, and he couldn't answer that question. We have water wells. We have Black Bayou right there. Traffic, the accidents, when I tell you, I hear these accidents all the time. I know exactly what they sound like. My husband walks out to them. We have 10 people that live on our street. 3 or 4 of them have been in a major collision. And I'm not talking about a fender bender. I'm talking about totaled out vehicles. You know, life and death situations. Okay, real quick. Drainage. My ditch is so barreled out that my fence is about to fall down. Drainage is a huge issue. I think that's all that I have since I'm running out of time. I thank you for your consideration. Please, if you're considering the will of the people, there's no one who wants this. We're not against development. We just don't want development that's going to change our lives completely.
Thank you, Ms. Rocca. Any questions or comments by the board? I have a question for the staff. Is there any known contamination or anything of record to validify anything that was said regarding the hazardous waste in that area?
Not to my knowledge.
We wouldn't have any record of that. We'd have to check with DEQ to find that out.
Any other questions or comments by the board?
I have a question for Mr. Nugent. I think he's the one that's immediately to the west of this property. Does your property run all the way to the north, to the bayou?
Mr. Nugent, if you could come back up to the podium.
Yes, sir. If you could repeat your question, please.
I know you're the immediate west neighbor to this particular piece of property. Does it run all the way to the north, to the bayou, where that wooded land or whatever that swampland or something is to the north of that cleared area?
Yes, sir. Our property extends from Friesen Road to Black Bayou.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If there's no more discussion, I'll call the applicant or give the applicant the opportunity to come and address the concerns. Is the applicant?
Gulf Highway is a state highway. There is traffic on it. As far as the amount of more traffic that would be put on it from this park, I can't really speak on behalf of that. We do have a drainage impact analysis that would need to be done. Prior to buying the property, we did go to the council, into the clerk of courts to try to find out any evidence of a landfill being there. We could find nothing. At this point, we do know that
Comment from the audience,
there are gray fill tax incentives for people to repurpose the property to usage. If, in fact, that it is a landfill, this would probably be the best use for the property because it will be a lot of surface dirt that's being moved. If I were to build houses, I would have to drive pylons into the ground to build houses, or I would have to do the big giant mounds to get it to level, for flood reasons. So I feel like this is actually the best use purpose. I bought the property 10 years ago. I actually lived in Lake Charles for a good amount of years. In reference to my rental homes that I have on Gulf Highway, which is less than a mile from here, I went through a very, very long divorce. It was 8 years. I just got these properties back out of the divorce and this land, which is why we're just coming to do this now. And this wasn't something that we did. We bought it for this purpose 10 years ago, which is why the name is Nison's Landing. But throughout that divorce, these properties, everything that I owned got tied up. Since I've required my homes this past January, I've actually put no less than $10,000 into one of the houses. When I bought them, I had a lot of repairs that I had to do to the home. I bought them really cheap, and I've been consistently fixing the homes. They do stay rented. I do have a home that the inside has been worked on, new sheetrock. The outside, it's a 120-year-old house, so it has old wood siding on it that we removed all of the old aluminum siding off of it, so it looks really bad. That is my next project. I probably have about $20,000 or $30,000 left of my own money that I plan on investing back into those rental houses. But yeah, that's the reason why, you know, if they see them and they don't think they look all that great, but from where I bought them at to what they are now to what they will be, there's been giant steps throughout that process. But I do self-fund all this. I'm not wealthy. I'm a worker. I own a food route. I'm a food service representative. I have 2 little boys, and I do what I can as a man to take care of my family. And again, we bought this property for this purpose, and I'm just able to actually kind of spread my wings and try to make this happen for my family.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I have one. Where do you live now?
I live in Shreveville, Louisiana, which is close to home. It's about 3 hours away.
How will you manage this park from there?
I will be moving back. It's actually good for me. I have a young son who's just absolutely brilliant, and Terrebonne Parish school system's horrible. So I'm really hoping that Calcasieu Parish school systems for my son will allow him to accelerate where he needs to go. But I will be moving back.
Any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Armentar?
The buildings that you plan on putting on there now, do they have to be built above a flood stage level?
Yes, sir, they do. The wash house would have to. So on the property as it stands now, there's an old warehouse that was there that has a slab. We're thinking, a lot of this depends on the drainage analysis, because if we do have to put a pond in, some of the layout may have to change to fit the pond. But my intent would be using the slab where the big warehouse is at to build up on top of that. So the cement slab would then be the foundation of where the new building would be. Instead of having to build a chain wall and put them on piers, the slab's already there.
So you're saying your bathhouses and stuff?
Yeah,
would be
a lot of that is
4 to 5
just
foot off the.
It's just the code of what my understanding of what an RV park, a luxury RV park requires. So it would be the office, washrooms, and bathhouses. Yes, sir, and
Right, but
restrooms.
that would have to be built 4 to 5 foot off the ground level, the original ground level right now?
Those structures have to meet FEMA elevation requirements, base flood elevation requirements.
We know about
the
what that
RVs do
is.
not.
The RV park itself does not have to.
Right, which was why we felt like this was the best use for the property in itself.
So in other words, if you had homes out there, all of those homes would have to be built up.
Right.
The RVs do not. They're considered temporary. And FEMA regulations does not require those to be elevated.
So they can't become residents.
Nope.
Right.
And we have some sort of time stipulation that whether it considers somebody a resident in his park or not?
180 days.
180.
Our pricing structure is going to be geared more towards someone coming in for weekends. I have no intention on offering 180-day rates.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank
may
you.
Be seated. Any questions or comments by the board? Ms. Christie, let's do a roll call vote.
Ms. Brown?
No.
Ms. Felicia?
No.
Mr. Williams?
No.
Ms. Dickerson?
No.
Mr. Little?
No?
Mr. Link?
No.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Mr. Armator?
No.
8 against.
Item 14 fails. No, please no outbursts from the audience. I'll give a few seconds, a couple minutes for y'all to clear out if you would like to.
You getting there?
You may have been here for that. Good. IT needs just a couple seconds. ask for a couple seconds. Okay, moving to item 15, take appropriate action on case RZ 04-061-16, a request by Jeffrey Couvillon to rezone, sorry about that, to rezone from agricultural A1 to recreational vehicle park to allow recreational vehicle park for recreational vehicle spaces, one manufactured home at 5080 Highway 27 South in Ward 4. I will entertain a motion for approval with the stipulations.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Brown and a second by Ms. Galicia. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located in Carlos and encompasses 1.66 acres. The petitioner resides in the manufactured home currently located on the land. He has requested that the land be rezoned to allow placement of 4 rental spaces for RVs. The land is outside of the urban service area, which means a minimum of 2 acres is required for an RV park. Because the park does not meet the minimum standards, the staff recommends that the request be denied. Should the board grant the request, the staff recommends the following stipulations: that the development adheres to the site plan on file, that a drainage impact analysis will be required unless appropriate waiver is granted by the Division of Engineering, that all exterior lighting must be oriented inward toward the development to minimize intrusion onto surrounding properties, that screening must be provided in accordance with Section 26-50 of the Parish Code, that RV park model types are prohibited, and that permitting is subject to approval from the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation? Sir?
My name's Jeff Couvillon. I live at 138 Wade Lane. This is a big adjointed lot that right off of Highway 27. It's just an acre and a half that I got nothing is going on there. All I want to do is accommodate some of them coworkers. I'm not building a luxury RV park. It's not my intent. All I want to do is capture some of those workers working down there in Hackberry at that LNG plant, and that's it. It's going to be a private little park. It's already fenced in. It's going to be run by me. I live in the mobile home that's on the property in the back. It's going to be run by me, strictly by me, and I'm not wanting all this. There's not going to be no hot tubs and swimming pools and all that stuff. I'm not into that. I work construction. I've done plenty of turnarounds, and that's when I get off a 12-hour shift, I'm not out to go to no weight room. I'm there to go to bed. And I've had a lot of them pass by and require or inquire of, why don't I do something like this, that we'd be interested in putting our little trailer right there. That's all my intent is. Put little 4 little campers there. I have the adequate amount of space. I've been spaced it out. I've got permits from the water company approving. They okayed it. They upgraded all my water meters already. I've got permits for the sewer system. I've got the DOT come by and approve the driveway if I decide to widen it. But that had to be approved upon y'all. But like I said, it was an inherited piece of property that I got from my grandfather, went to my dad, to me. And after everybody passed away, I bought it off all my siblings. And me and my wife's the only one that live on that property. And I just want to utilize it to make a little extra money. That's about it. You know, just,
Right.
I don't know. What do y'all determine as a hardship?
Staff want to answer that?
If there's some sort of impediment on the land that would cause like a variance necessity, or there was another one previously that the board heard tonight where a mother was sick and needed to be near her son.
Well, I've been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And so what I'm trying to do is develop a little extra income so that if, Lord willing, that happens, my wife don't have to work at McDonald's for make a living. And she can collect my Social Security and work 4 or 5 RVs, whatever I can stipulate and get on this piece of property legally, which I see no issue with it. But under this medication, I'm doing fine. But if this happens, it happens. But that's my intent, is I'm more or less taking care of her. Sure. And it's just an acre and a half doing absolutely nothing. The water meters are already there. It was an old house that was there from my grandfather. Carlos Fire Department tore it down. It's all cleaned up, nice, beautiful little lot, as you can see. And I just want to utilize it, put some RVs on it, make some money. That's all my intent. But it's not going to be no luxury campsite. That's not my intent. These are just for the workers working in them plants, and that's all I want in there. I don't want no families and children. I don't want all that. I just want to take care of the workers. That's it.
Any questions, any further questions for the applicant by the board? All right. Thank you, sir. You
Yep.
may be seated. Any questions or comments by the board? Just a general comment. I know that we have to decide the hardship that we heard from Mr. Cuvion. But, you know, everything that we do will set a precedent. So the land is not conforming for this type of application. So we just the previous agenda item, you know, everybody has their opinions about the RV parks, even within their standards. So I just want to make sure that we keep that in mind.
It looks like there's an RV park across the street, is that right? From the pictures?
Yes.
Behind it?
No comments from the audience, thank you. But that, I assume that one's conforming. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
All right. Ms. Christie, roll call vote.
Ms. Felicia?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Little?
No.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Dickerson?
No.
Mr. Armator?
Yes.
6 for and 2 against.
Item 15 passes. Item 16, take appropriate action on case VA 04-042-16, a request by Jeffrey Cuvion for a variance to decrease the minimum lot size required 2 acres, requesting 1.66 acres at 5080 Highway 27 South in Ward 4. I will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Galicia. Need a second? By Mr. Smith. Second by Mr. Smith. Ms. Wallace.
Because there is no evidence of a hardship, the staff recommends that the request be denied.
Okay. The applicant would like to add to the staff's presentation. You may come to the podium at this time. All right. Any questions or comments by the board? Let's, Ms. Christie, let's do a roll call vote.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Dickerson?
Yes, and I misvoted on the other one, but it doesn't really matter because it passed anyways, but yes.
Mr. Little?
No.
Mr. Armator?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Galicia?
Yes.
7 for and 1 against.
Item 16 passes. Item 17, take appropriate action on case RZ 08-063-16, a request by Calcasieu RR Enterprises LLC to rezone from agricultural to manufactured home park to manufactured home park to allow an expansion of an existing manufactured home park, 48 existing spaces, 17 proposed additional spaces at 1887 Arsene Road in Ward 8. I will entertain a motion for approval with the stipulations.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Galicia, a second by Mr. Little. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located in the LeBlue settlement area and encompasses 1.25 acres. The land is part of a larger tract where the existing LeBlue manufactured home park is located. The existing park consists of 48 spaces. The proposed rezoning and the replacement of the wastewater treatment facility will allow the park to expand to include an additional 17 spaces, with 3 of those spaces located on this particular piece of the overall land. Because the development is consistent with the character of the surrounding area, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following stipulations: that the development adhere to the site plan on file with the division, provided that the director may authorize adjustments to site plans, that a drainage impact analysis will be required unless appropriate waiver is granted by the Division of Engineering, that all exterior lighting must be oriented inward toward the development to minimize intrusion onto surrounding properties, that screening must be provided in accordance with Section 26-50 of the Parish Code, that permitting is subject to approval of Gravity Drainage District Number 7 of Ward 8, and that no additional recreational vehicle spaces are allowed without police jury approval.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's presentation?
If the board would like any elaboration, I'd be happy to do that, but
Okay.
if there are no questions, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Any questions or comments by the board? Seeing no opposition, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 17 passes. Item 18, I'd like to announce the case VA 08-043-16, a request by Calcasieu RR Enterprises LLC for a variance to decrease the lot size requirements. Requires 5,000 square feet and 50 feet in width. They're requesting 3,000 square feet and 35 feet in width at 1887 Arsene Road in Ward 8 has been withdrawn. Item 19, take appropriate action on a request by Oak Grove Development LLC for preliminary subdivision approval to allow a single-family residential subdivision, 92 lots in Oak Grove Phase 2 at the north end of Kings Canyon Road in Ward 2. I will entertain a motion for approval with the stipulations.
So move.
Motion by Ms. Dickerson,
Second.
second by Ms. Galicia. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located south of Lake Charles and encompasses 26 acres of agricultural zone land. If approved, the development will consist of 92 lots for construction of single-family houses. The lots will have public water and community sewer treatment. It should be noted that the developer has also requested rezoning of the land to R1 and a variance on the lot size, road frontage, setbacks, and sign height, all to be considered later on the agenda. Because the proposed development is consistent with the character of the area, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following stipulations: that the development is subject to an application for and/or compliance with an LPDES stormwater discharge permit, which may be required through the Department of Environmental Quality and the Calcasieu Parish Division of Planning and Development, that a drainage impact analysis and a traffic impact analysis will be required unless appropriate waiver is granted by the Division of Engineering, that the preliminary plat must be approved by the Division of Engineering prior to submittal of engineering plans, and that no construction on individual homes will be permitted until Waterworks District Number 5 of Wards 3 and 8 has certified completion of the water system improvement project and the payment of all required impact fees.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. If the applicant would like to speak or has anything to add to the staff's presentation, you may come to the podium at this time.
No, sir, I do not, unless it's opposition.
Okay. All right. Any questions or comments by the board? Seeing no opposition, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 19 passes. Item 20, take appropriate action on a request by Oak Grove Development LLC for preliminary subdivision approval to allow single-family residential subdivision, 59 lots in Highland Hills Phase 2 at the north end of Highland Hills Boulevard in Ward 2. I will entertain a motion for approval with the stipulations.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Cobb and a second by Ms. Galicia.
I'm sorry, Ms. Cobb's not here tonight.
I'm sorry, Ms. Brown. Thank you, Jennifer.
This property is located south of Lake Charles and encompasses just over 13 acres of agricultural zone land. If approved, the development will consist of 59 lots for construction of single-family houses. The lots will have public water and community sewer treatment. It should be noted that this project, along with the previous project, are included in the upcoming rezoning and variance request. Because the proposed development is consistent with the character of the area, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the same 4 stipulations that were included on the previous request.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. The applicant? All right. Any questions or comments by the board? Seeing no opposition, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 20 passes. Item 21, take appropriate action on case RZ02-064-16, a request by Oak Grove Development LLC to rezone from agricultural to single-family residential to allow residential development, future phases of Oak Grove and Highland Hills at the north end of Kings Canyon Road and Highland Hills Boulevard in Ward 2. I will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Galicia, second by Mr. Link. Ms. Wallace.
This request encompasses the 39 acres included in the 2 previous subdivision requests, as well as an additional 43 acres to be reserved for future phases of both Oak Grove and Highland Hills. Rezoning to R1 is more restrictive on the allowed uses, but also allows for smaller lot sizes with community water and sewer. Because the proposed development is consistent with the area, the staff recommends that the request be granted.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Yeah, the applicant. Yeah. Any questions or comments by the board? Seeing no opposition, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 21 passes. Item 22, take appropriate action on case VA 02-044-16, a request by Oak Grove Development LLC for a variance to decrease the lot size requirement, requires 7,500 square feet, requesting 5,500 square feet. To decrease the public road frontage requirement, requires 60 feet, they're requesting 41 feet. And to decrease the front yard setback requires 30 feet, requesting 20 feet at the north end of Kings Canyon Road and Highland Hills Boulevard in Ward 2. I will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Galicia, second by Mr. Link. Ms. Wallace.
These variance requests will allow more flexibility in the design of the developments as well as the actual home sites. In 2014, the board approved variance requests on the first phases of both Oak Grove and Highland Hills. Because the board has approved similar requests in the immediate area, the staff recommends that the request be granted.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Yes, sir. Any questions or comments by the board? Seeing no opposition, all in favor state aye.
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 All opposed? Item 22 passes. Item 23, take appropriate action on case VA 02-045-16, a request by Oak Grove Development LLC for a variance to increase the maximum height of on-premises signs allowed 10 feet. They are requesting 12.5 feet in the 4,800 and 4,900 blocks of Highway 14 East in Ward 2. I will entertain a motion for approval. Motion by Mr. Little, second by Mr. Link. Ms. Wallace.
Under this request, the petitioner would like to place a subdivision sign at the entrance to Oak Grove and to Highland Hills, both off of Highway 14 East. The signs are allowed, but the code requires that the maximum height of the sign be 10 feet. The architectural detail of the sign makes the proposed height exceed the maximum and necessitates a variance request. Because minimal impacts are to be expected, the staff recommends that the request be granted.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Assume the applicant, you're good. Questions or comments by the board? Seeing no opposition, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 23 passes. Item 24, take appropriate action on a request by Donna Riggs Stutz for preliminary subdivision approval to allow a single-family residential subdivision, 15 lots in Camellia Court at 838 Podrasky Road in Ward 1. I will entertain a motion for approval with the stipulations.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Dickerson,
Second.
second by Ms. Galicia. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located in the Moss Bluff area and encompasses nearly 7 acres of agricultural zone land. If preliminary approval is granted, and if the rezoning request is approved, the development will consist of 15 lots for construction of single-family houses. The average lot size is 4/10 of an acre. The lots will have public water and community sewer treatment. Because the development meets the minimum standards of the proposed zoning, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following stipulations: that the development is subject to an application for and/or compliance with an LPDES stormwater discharge permit, that a drainage impact analysis and a traffic impact analysis will be required unless appropriate waiver is granted by the Division of Engineering, and that the preliminary plat must be approved by the Division of Engineering prior to submittal of engineering plans.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. We do have 2 blue cards in opposition for this agenda item. If the applicant would like to speak on your behalf, you may come to the podium at this time. Okay. At this time, I will call David Park.
David Park, 704 Podrasky Road. First off, I've submitted some information. I don't know if anybody's seen the documents that I forwarded outlining a protest, what our concerns are. Has anybody seen that?
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I didn't either.
I will spend a little bit more time in detail. Also, I'm sorry? Uh-huh, this afternoon, or midday today, yeah. Amanda, maybe?
It just didn't get put in there.
Okay. First off, I'm a 20-year resident, one of the original 5 that was on this Podrasky Road. It's a very pretty, scenic, windy, curvy road. It has never been improved. It was a single-lane road when we moved in, gravel, basically been asphalted. We've had 4 or 5 new residents most recently, the last couple of years. It's all about the road and the traffic. Podrasky was never designed for the level of traffic increase that's potential to occur with this development. I solicited a petition. Every resident on Podrasky is against it. Every resident on Musser is against it. Every resident on Natchez, which are the 3 main surrounding roads. I also went to some of the newer development on the side roads and essentially haven't found anybody that's in favor of this development. It's going to increase traffic on Podrasky exponentially. Like I say, there's only about 10 residents there now. And on Musser, it's going to have the same effect. A 15 development home, these small homes that are waterfront. If we look across the river right now, we can see 10, 12 cars pulling up at every one of these little camps on the weekend. It's going to be the same thing here. We're looking at 75 to 100 cars on a weekend, hauling trailers and jet skis and having a good time on the waterfront. It's great, but this is not the road to be doing it on. I've got some pictures here. I'm going to pass these out because you probably haven't seen these either. I've annotated some of the issues. Again, it's windy hills. There's a curvy road, numerous blind spots. You're going to see where the driveways come into these blind spots and curves. The entrance to Podrasky Road, it's totally substandard. It's not even a full 2 lanes there. It's about a lane and a half. I go down and maintain it usually to try and get it so the bus can get through. There's a school bus that comes through there. You can talk to the bus driver or operator. She'd be complaining about it as well. There's a number of ditches and sharp drop-offs. We've had incidents on the road already. There's a lot of walkers, hikers, cyclists, runners that use this road from the surrounding neighborhood and not just in the other side roads. We had a collision with a ATV, a mule with 4 kids. The neighbor had a collision there. Fortunately, nobody was hurt seriously, but there's been vehicle damage and the ATV was destroyed. Routine near misses. Almost every time when you come into the entrance of Podrasky and at Musser, you can see the pictures there. It's a sharp 90-degree, trees on both sides, just not a good road. No turnaround on Podrasky. The school bus turns around and the garbage trucks turn around in the private residences at the end of the street. We had a stuck 18-wheeler recently, tried to turn around in there, got stuck, blocked the road, had to have emergency response, get the school kids and stuff off the bus. We've had several calls for blocked road when they were building the new houses on the newest section of Podrasky where there's a couple of new recent constructions. Had some issues with useful speeding. Sheriff was involved. We ended up getting the signs put up, the speeding signs. You can see there's 10-mile-an-hour speed limit signs on these S-curves and blind curves, which can't be enforced unless you have someone right there all the time. The other thing, there's a low spot on Podrasky. It floods during heavy rain. It's completely impassable. We use a john boat. I take my truck there. We get people across the road. You'll see the low spot I designated on the pictures there. It doesn't hit very often, but when it does, it can be, days before that water goes down. What I suggested is that area would either need to have a bridge or possibly elevate the road. The curves should be addressed. That may require some confiscation of people's property on that, particularly on that entrance curve with the. Okay, that's fine. On the incoming road, there's a couple of places you probably have to take property away to make the curve passable or safer. Also, we've had inquiries about permits. EPA, Army Corps of Engineers were contacted, and we haven't determined any records for wetlands determination or the waterfront development permits, which I know aren't your jurisdiction, but that'll have to be addressed as well. That's about it. I guess the only thing I can say is that I don't think the parish needs to take on the additional risk of litigation that could occur. If this development gets approved, there's going to be a lot more traffic on that road, and it's really substandard already right now. So, thank you, sir.
I cannot make out the first name, but the last name's Adams. Steve, okay.
While this gentleman's coming up, if I could just remind you that you have two requests on this particular property. The first that we're discussing right now is the preliminary subdivision approval, and the second will be the rezoning.
Name is Steve Adams. I live at 1185 Rue Juliana. I'm on the corner of Musser and Juliana. The parish is exposed currently to the traffic issues. The road is not up to standards for any parish. That blind curve should have been remediated when the work came in to hard surface the road. So it's kind of the cart before the horse, and the engineering department should not be allowed to grant a waiver for a traffic study unless the road is remediated. So I think you need to consider some of the process that you're going through before you make an approval. Number two, there's more than just 2 or 3 blind corners. There was one created across the street from me on the corner of Burke and Musser, which all comes out of Podrosky. There's not adequate parking for the duplexes, so they park all the way to the street. And so you've got other processes going on with the traffic in addition to Podrosky, because Burke dead ends in the back to the north where this new subdivision is going in. So I don't know if the parish has plans to tie that in. Well, I think someone needs to answer that.
It wouldn't be a question for this meeting, sir.
Okay, I understand that, but what I'm trying to say is the parish, the road doesn't meet standards currently. So when the road was put in for the hard surface, it should have been fixed. And it's a total blind corner with not enough clearance for 2 cars to come in and out of Podrosky where it hits Musser.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
I got one question.
Coach Williams.
I'm looking at several of those pictures. You mentioned the blind curves. Who's responsible? Is that private property, or is that our property is responsible for the blind curves? Because I know when you build a road, you build it according to nature's standards, I guess. How can you eliminate the blind curves?
Well,
what would you suggest?
Well, the blind curve at Podrosky should have been opened up.
Sir, the question was addressed towards
Well, he
the
was
staff.
looking at me. Sorry.
Well,
I think that would be a question for the staff as far as,
to modify a
Liability.
curve in a road, the parish would have to go in and buy right-of-way and do new alignments and things like that. And I can't say if there's any plans to do that. We would have to research that and let you guys know. But it's not a simple matter of getting an asphalt truck out there and dropping asphalt.
does that answer the question, Coach?
I have a question too. When you're,
Ms. Galicia.
these lot sizes are small, and I live in Moss Bluff. Are they up to parish standards for homes?
If the property is rezoned to R1, yes, they would meet all the minimum standards.
If we approve a subdivision, but don't approve the rezoning, they can still put homes, just not as many?
Right. If they do community sewer with the public water, it would be a half-acre minimum. And right now, they're at 4/10, so it would just be a 10th larger.
Some of them are even .28.
But when you average it out, the average is 4/10. So theoretically,
It's pretty darn close.
I think the engineers here and could probably address it, but with 15 lots, if you don't pass the rezoning and the subdivision still moves forward under agricultural, my guess is that you're still looking at over 10 lots at a half-acre each.
You'd have to have a community sewer.
Right. Without a community sewer, it would have to be 1 acre.
If it remains A1.
We do have, just for the board's information, we do have a John Lowry that has filled out a blue card. That's the engineer for this project. So if y'all have any more pointed questions regarding engineering, he has offered. If you guys have any more questions regarding engineering of the subdivision.
Speaking of engineering, Mr. Chair, on the traffic study, The reason we word it the way we do is because the ordinance actually calls for a traffic impact analysis if there's 1,000 trips per day.
Right.
Typically, what engineering says is that's going to be a subdivision of 100 lots or more.
Right.
And clearly, this one does not have 100, but we would just like for engineering to be the one to do that traffic count and let us know that it doesn't trigger the threshold.
Sure. Sure, and we talk about it multiple times, usually a meeting. This is step one in the process. There's many other people and agencies that will be looking at this to get permitting and move forward. Mr. Crane.
Mr. Chairman, I just also want to follow up. It's been mentioned that Podrosky Road is not up to standard, and we're not aware that it's not to a standard. We would have to check with engineering, but the proposed subdivision obviously has to be built to parish standards. And so that's with all the right-of-way, the road, the current road requirements, cul-de-sac requirements to make sure that there is a adequate turnaround at the end of that road. So that's what the plan, the preliminary plat shows. So just wanted to point that out.
Yes, sir. At this time, we would allow the applicant to come to the podium and address the concerns of the opposition, if you would like. Is the applicant present? Okay.
It's Mr. Lowry, the engineer. He's on behalf of the applicant.
Okay. Mr. John Lowry?
Good evening, John Lowry at 5135 Highway 27 South in Sulphur. I'm an engineer representing the applicant. Excuse me.
Is there anything you could shed some light on some of the concerns brought forth by the opposition?
Yes, sir. I'm not aware of the road situation in or out, if it's up to standard or not at this point. But the subdivision would be, as Mr. Crane said, designed according to the current parish regulations and requirements. There would be a mechanical sewer plant, so that would help take care of the lot sizes. And that's all I know of right now. If you have any other questions.
Have you driven back there and seen it?
I've driven down that road a few times in the past. It is certainly a winding road, without a doubt. I could not say whether it's actually up to standard now or not. It is asphalted, at least it was some time ago. So that's all I can tell you. I've never been in a situation where we were building a subdivision on a road that was not up to standard. So already, I would say that would have to be. So the question's been brought up that someone would need to look at it, parish engineering, and/or us as the engineers.
Any other questions for Mr. Lowry? Mr. Armentrout.
The Ward 1 Water District has approved saying that they can provide water
Yes.
to an additional subdivision?
Yes, sir. They have a line run down to the.
They have
right now.
adequate, they would be willing to supply water.
Correct.
Any other questions for Mr. Lowry? Thank you, sir. You may be
Thank you.
seated. Any other questions or comments by the board? Mr. Smith.
I'm familiar with this road, and there are parts of it that if you have traffic in both directions, you have next to no shoulder.
Yeah.
And to me, that is an issue, just with the road itself. But I am familiar with it.
Any other questions or comments by the board? Ms. Christie, we could do a roll call vote.
Ms. Dickerson?
No.
Ms. Brown?
No.
Mr. Little?
No?
Mr. Williams?
Yeah.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Mr. Leek?
No.
Mr. Armitage?
Yes.
Ms. Felicia?
No.
6 against and 2 for.
Item 24 fails. Item 25, take appropriate action on case RZ 01-067-16, a request by Donna Riggs Stutes to rezone from agricultural to single-family residential to allow residential development, 15 lots in Camellia Court at 838 Podrasky Road in Ward 1. I will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Armentar, second by Mr. Link. Ms. Wallace.
This is the same property included in the previous item. Rezoning it to R1 would restrict development to houses only under agricultural zoning. Manufactured homes and other structures can be placed there. The staff does recommend that the request be granted. I'm not sure how the applicant feels about the rezoning with the subdivision not being approved. I'm not sure if maybe Mr. Lowry can address that.
Okay.
Or if maybe, if the owners aren't here, if he would like to defer this request until he can consult with the owners.
Sure, it makes sense. Mr. Lowry, could you come? Were you able to hear Ms. Wallace?
Yes. I would, I don't know if the owners are here or not, if they are. No. I would certainly request on their behalf that this item be, the rezoning be allowed to occur, but that still doesn't allow us to proceed with the subdivision, and then until a study of the entrance road, Podrasky Road itself, and what improvements could be made, that might affect the outcome.
If, I think the question is, if we rezone this, they may not want to rezone to R1 if they can no longer do the 15 lots as submitted, so that's.
With the owner being absent, then
Well,
I would.
Mr.
We
Chair,
can defer. Go
possibly
ahead.
would maybe a better option. I'm not sure what action is going to be taken, but if the board were to approve the request, or even if they voted to recommend that the request be denied, you still have 2 days before the final action would be taken.
Okay.
So regardless of what action is taken tonight, if the owners say that they do not want it to be rezoned, then you could withdraw or defer
Okay.
after tonight,
Sounds plausible.
That would,
before Thursday,
wonderful.
preferably.
Yes. Yes, well, I'm certainly fine with that. I'm sure we can contact them and
Sure.
find something out.
Any questions for Mr. Lowry while he's up here? Thank you, sir.
Thank
you. May be seated. We have no blue cards in opposition for this. Ms. Christie, if there's are there any questions or comments by the board? We can do a roll call vote on this one as well.
Mr. Little?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Ms. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yeah.
Ms. Brown?
No.
Mr. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Armator?
Yes.
Ms. Felicia?
Yes.
6 for and 2 against.
Item 25 passes. Item 26, take appropriate action on case RZ 07-066-16, a request by Eddie Austin Sr. to rezone from agricultural to heavy industrial and central business commercial to allow heavy industrial development, meat products, packaging, and processing, including slaughtering, and future commercial development in the 4900 block of J. Jardle Road in Ward 7. The petitioner has requested that this case be deferred for 30 days. I will entertain a motion to defer for 30 days.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Dickerson and a second by Ms. Brown. All in favor state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 26 is deferred. As we move to item 27, I have numerous blue cards. I just wanted to get with the staff. It's my understanding that we have 4 speakers that will speak in opposition for 27 on behalf of all these cards. Is that your understanding as well?
That was my understanding, but I'm not sure how many cards were turned in after we had that discussion. Maybe you could remind the audience that the time would have to be divided among all the cards.
Correct. We have.
2.5 minutes for 4 people.
Right.
What, I believe what it's saying is that there's no card.
Right.
We agree on one speaker?
Yes.
There's,
One was Robert Chandler.
there's a total of 10, there's a total of 10 cards. It was my understanding that Mr. Robert Chandler would speak. Also, Mr. Joe Ellender would speak. Is that consensus? Mr. Charlie Atherton would speak, and Mr. Dan Rhodes. Okay. Since we do have so many additional cards in opposition, one of the speakers you can ask to give a visual representation of the opposition. But moving on to item 27, take appropriate action on case RZ07-060-16, a request by Old Penn LLC to rezone from agricultural to heavy industrial restricted to allow restricted heavy industrial development, a solid waste sanitary landfill and industrial solid waste site at the intersection of Highway 108 West and Gum Island Road in Ward 7. I will entertain a motion for approval with this.
I'd like to recuse myself from this vote.
Yes, sir. Let it be known on the record that Mr. Kyle Link will recuse himself from item 27.
I move for approval.
Okay. I will entertain a motion for approval with the stipulations. Motion
Second.
by Coach Williams and a second by Ms. Galicia. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located in the Vinton area, south of Interstate 10, and encompasses nearly 520 acres of land. Should the rezoning be approved, Gum Island Resources will begin the state and federal permitting process to develop a Type 1 and Type 2 landfill. Per DEQ, a Type 1 facility disposes of non-hazardous industrial waste. These would be waste that result from a manufacturing, industrial, or mining process. A Type 2 facility disposes of residential or commercial waste. This includes household garbage and waste generated by commercial businesses or residences. The developer has a presentation for all of you, but before the presentation, I would like to remind everyone that the rezoning process is the first of many steps in a lengthy process that will include stringent engineering, geological, and environmental reviews by DEQ, as well as a host of other state and federal agencies. DEQ will also require a detailed capacity evaluation that will take into consideration the anticipated population growth and economic development within the region. Because there is a need for additional long-term waste disposal, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following stipulations: that unless modifications are required due to technical or engineering considerations and approved by the director, all uses and improvements must be pursuant to and in strict accordance with the following: the submittal by Gum Island Resources entitled Justification Report for Proposed Rezoning Properties dated September 8, 2016, and received by the division on October 5, 2016, the development agreement required by Section 26-127 of the Parish Code, and all other applicable federal, state, and local laws, statutes, ordinances, codes, resolutions, rules, and regulations, that a drainage impact analysis and a traffic impact analysis will be required unless appropriate waivers are granted by the Division of Engineering, that permitting is subject to future bonding requirements in the event parish roads are impacted by heavy truck traffic, that permitting is subject to approval from Gravity Drainage District Number 2 of Ward 7 and the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development, that the zoning approval is for Old Penn LLC et al. And will not be transferred, assigned, purchased by any party without prior approval from the director following receipt of a written request for transfer, that the site shall not accept any waste which is not permitted for a Type 1 or Type 2 facility under LAC 33-7.1115, and that a development permit for the use be obtained within 1 year of enactment of rezoning, provided that the director may extend or waive the time limit upon receipt of written justification from the applicant. And before you move on to the applicant, I do want to point out that we received a lengthy submittal from one of the opponents that was representing a large group of people. It is split up into 11 separate parts on your tablet. And we also received from an opponent some proposed stipulations, and that as well as on your tablet.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. We will now turn it to the applicant, and you have, according to our bylaws, you have 10 minutes to give your
Thank you very much.
presentation.
My name is Chad Brose, 4232 Bluebonnet Boulevard, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It's our office address. So as Ms. Wallace laid out, what we're requesting is a rezoning of the property to I-2R, and of course, this is going to be conditional upon a successful permitting process with DEQ. And again, just to reiterate, this site will not be accepting any hazardous waste on the site. So I just wanted to reiterate that over and over again. Over the life of the project, Gun Mountain Resources is going to be investing about $50 million from, it's a long horizon in terms of the sales and the development. And so our capital investment will be north of $50 million during the life of the project. Again, just mentioning, this is the first step. There's been some discussions and questions that we have answered in terms of there being a need or not being a need. Probably 2 years ago, we had met with DEQ, with one of the assistant secretaries. We'll go to that a little bit more in detail, but we just want to stress that we're not the final arbiter on if there is a need in this area. DEQ goes through a very stringent needs analysis, which would be in the next phase to determine ultimately if there's a need for Southwest Louisiana. In addition to that, they're all, as Jennifer pointed out, very stringent design engineering and environmental hurdles, which is going to take 12 to 18 months of heavy engineering and design that's heavily scrutinized by multiple different regulatory bodies. And then during the construction phase, obviously there's audits, and during operational, there's additional performance audits that we have to stay and remain in compliance with DEQ and their standards. We talked about a needs analysis. On the map, you'll see that each one of the purple dots represents an existing Type 1 or Type 1 and 2 municipal solid waste site. And you can see, in Calcasieu and the parishes to the north and south, that there is an unserved market. What kind of drives the need? In Calcasieu Parish, there's multiple billions, 100+ billion of announced industrial projects. Some of those are in various stages of construction, which is a good problem to have for any region, any parish. But with that comes, growth, and with growth comes additional waste products. So that is what's ultimately driving the need. And obviously, there's a corresponding growth with the residential, which is going to, further drive municipal solid waste that, will need to be disposed of. Currently, the state, or currently the parish, the garbage is leaving the parish and going, either to Texas or parish to the east. So we kind of ask ourselves, we understand that landfill is sort of a hot button issue, so the parish is producing a lot of its own product, but what benefits is a project like this to the parish? A few things. One is that it's going to be a job creator. During the construction phase, which is going to be about 18 to 24 months, we'll create about 155 jobs. With those jobs will be about $10 million of wages, and then an additional just under $24 million of economic GDP growth, and then a value add in addition to that of about $12 million. These numbers were derived from a study performed by Dr. Daryl Piccarrell at McNeese after evaluating, the landfill and the economic drivers. So that's each cell. Total for the whole project, we're talking a little under, or $91 million of wages that we'll create with this project, $133 million of
of GDP and about $68 million in additional value add. This is just nearing the construction portion of each cell. The next slide will highlight the operational benefits in terms of dollars and jobs to the parish. So again, about 110 permanent jobs created, total wages on an annual basis of just under $8 million, GDP of just under $13 million, and value add of about $6.5 million, and that's on an annual basis. Over the life of the project, you can see the numbers: $380 million in wages paid, $353 million in GDP, and another $177 million of value add to the parish. So we're producing a lot of waste, and we get to monetize that waste, and that can be spent back in the parish for other things. What's that? 5 minutes. Okay. In addition, we got taxes, or sales tax, and so about $237,000 in parish taxes and about $466,000 in sales tax, and then about $1 million sort of when you add everything up on an annual basis based on the operation. One of the things that's a really good driver for this project is where it's located. It's going to decrease a lot of traffic and taxing on local infrastructure. Right now, a lot of trucks are making duplicate trips. They pick up on the west side of the parish, they drive across the bridge to a certain location, and then it comes back across the bridge to its final destination. The study said that this project, being where it would be located, would save the parish an additional $400,000 a year just in infrastructure wear and tear. Project location, this project has a few different attributes. One is that I defined 500 acres, which will allow for a large buffer area. Only about 250 acres will be utilized for the actual landfill itself. Its proximity to an interstate exit with the state road, which means that it's going to decrease a lot of wear and tear on parish roads. So the close proximity to an interchange. It's about a mile away from the nearest neighborhood and homes. And just to point out, we're committing, or as a company, that we'll adopt the highway between the interchange and our site. So if there's any sort of trash or anything that's going to be that could come out of a truck or whatnot, we're going to have as part of our operations a regular cleanup of that particular route. So now we're going to go to the design and construction process. Dr. Harold Leggett is a former secretary of DEQ, and he has sort of a unique background in the complex engineering and the regulatory aspects of the project. So I'm going to let him kind of walk through some of those things.
Okay, and I'm going to be brief.
About 2 minutes, Mr.
Okay. And Jennifer did the best job I've heard in 30 years of describing the DEQ process, and the landfills today are a lot different than they were in '94. '94, before the new solid waste reg was put in place, it was dump was the word that was used. In '94, the regular change, which required double liner systems, leachate collection systems, the way they're constructed, groundwater monitoring wells, to help make sure that some of the nightmares that occurred in the 50s and 60s and early 70s don't happen again. So what Gum Island is proposing will incorporate all of these design requirements that DEQ has: the double liners, leachate collection, leak detection systems, and the groundwater monitoring system to help deal with any potential issues that may occur. In addition, they've gone beyond that because they're also going to enclose the site with a perimeter berm, which will basically serve as somewhat of a containment. If the unfortunate event there's something did happen in the site, then you actually have that additional perimeter berm that's going to help contain things. The DEQ process we put up here, you heard Jennifer talk about it a little bit, but really what we're asking for is you to give us a conditional exemption to essentially submit the application to DEQ. DEQ ultimately still has to approve or not approve of the permit. And to do that, they have to go through all these processes, and that includes consult with, these are some of the people that will have to be interacting in this process: the Corps of Engineers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, SHPO, Cultural Resources, DNR, local folks, your Gravity districts over here to make sure that all the boxes are checked and all the i's and t's are dotted and crossed, and that no issues. There will be a tremendous public input process that DEQ will have. They will have hearings over here in the parish at wherever you really want them to have it, to go through the permitting process. I think I'm out of time, probably. Oh.
You can go ahead and finish what you were saying, and state your name and address for the record.
Harold Leggett, PPM Consultants, 7936 Office Park Boulevard, Baton Rouge.
All right. Any questions for the applicant at this time? Thank you, sir. You may be seated. Call Mr. Robert Chandler in opposition.
Robert Chandler.
Y'all can have 4 speaking, it's about 2.5 minutes apiece.
Okay.
Please state your address for the record.
1947 Thoroughbred Lane, Benton, Louisiana. You received a document yesterday. It was in several sections due to the size of limit of the emails, but there's a 105-page document. There are 3 copies, one for 3 different areas up there. We request that you at least review through that to realize there's been a lot of effort put forward to determine whether or not there's adequate information or there's a real need for this landfill. I'd like to ask if it's okay that the audience show of hands.
Sure.
Who is against this landfill? Anybody for it? Okay. So there's 19 sections to this document, and I'm just going to hit the 3rd page, which is proposed topics to be discussed: hazards, traffic issues, the location, smell, dropped trash, flooding, future community expansion, engineering study, the experience they have at landfills, which is only one landfill under our knowledge, financial stability of the company. It's an LLC company, means if something goes wrong, they could always file bankruptcy, and Calcasieu Parish will be facing whatever cleanup that may be required. Insurance, their liability, the history of their other landfill, what kind of issues they've had in the past, what kind, if have they ever been cited for any DEQ issues. Justification for denial of rezoning of the heavy industrial landfill. I believe Charlie's going to speak about that. Okay, air pollution, current and the future, and statistical wind current data. In this document is all those topics. Hazards. We have current residents that live within 1 mile of this area. Okay? Every person that's on the south side of Interstate 10 has a water well. They do not have city water. They cook, clean, bathe in that water. It's used to prepare their food with. DEQ, from my understanding, is only required to do testing every 6 months. So if the leachate, where they have this double liner, were to leak, it could be past one day, and for 6 months, the day after, those that are on that water well that are using the aquifer could possibly be exposed to contamination from this hazards. We all know what goes in trash cans. You can never say that it's non-hazardous. You go to the store every day and buy chemicals. Okay. I'd ask if somebody else that had 2.5 minutes could spare their time for me. Is that okay?
One of the, either Joe Ellender, Dan Rhodes, or Charlie Atherton.
Okay. Okay.
And you're, who are you, sir? Is that Mr. Rhodes? Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I'll allow you to finish your thought.
All right.
Just
well, like I
briefly.
said, this document covers all that, and there are many topics here that are concerned to the residents here and the local area. One of the things on the air, it shows that 66% of the time the area that goes from south to north or southeast to northwest or from east to west, which is all in the direction of Benton and 2 residential areas that are within less than a mile of the facility.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler. This time, Mr. Charlie Atherton.
I'm hard of hearing, and I apologize. We want to thank you for your service, and I appreciate the zoning staff's time during their lunch hour today to discuss with me the stipulations that the staff has given to you for consideration
Atherton,
tonight.
Could you give me your address?
Oh, Charlie Atherton, 122 Vine Street, Sulphur, Louisiana.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you. Do you have in front of you the zoning stipulations that we're asking you to consider? I don't know how the mechanics work. Is this something that you would vote on now, or should I finish my presentation and then you?
You go ahead. You have your time. Go ahead and say what you need to say.
Yeah, because I don't want to lose the opportunity,
Sure.
for
No,
this body to.
It's all there. In fact, they've been reviewing all of your points here on our tablets.
Well, I thank you I appreciate that. I also want to publicly apologize to the staff for accusing them of malfeasance of office. That I now realize that accusing them of malfeasance says that they broke the law, and that's the wrong choice of words for me to convey my message. So the staff had no intent of now and ever violating the law. I think I don't feel good once I understood the magnitude.
Sure.
I hope they accept the apology. But we ask that you approve these zoning stipulations to the proposed the I2R zoning change, because we don't know how the police jury may vote, and these stipulations will help protect our breathing air, groundwater, and quality of life in the future. Once the property is zoned I2R, it becomes a third world country that the police jury no longer has any control over. We also ask that you not approve this I2R zoning, because there's absolutely no need for any type of landfill or dump in Calcasieu Parish. The government agency's goals are and have always been waste reduction and less dumps. The staff did not do an independent waste needs study on our behalf to prove there's a need for a new waste dump in Calcasieu Parish, nor did the staff even verify that the Gum Cove Island Resources LLC zoning justification information given to them was accurate, or if vital information was left out. The staff based their decision to approve I2R zoning based on the applicant's inaccurate, misleading, or incomplete information. Prior police jury and staff put into place the long-term waste solution that we use today, and the people passed the garbage tax to pay the extra money to not have dumps in their neighborhood anywhere in the parish. So we're asking you to please deny this unknown I2R zoning. And when you talk about the DEQ,
About 30 seconds.
we do not depend on them for our quality of life, protecting our air and our breathing water. We got a history to prove it. We would appreciate you approving the stipulations.
Thank you, Mr. Atherton. Before I call the next speaker, I'd like to publicly recognize Mr. Les Farnham, our police juryman, one of our, along with Mr. Judd Bears, we recognized earlier. Appreciate you guys being here. Mr. Joe Ellender.
Joe Ellender, 297 Edwin Ellender Road. I'm here as a concerned Calcasieu Parish resident. I'm a little surprised we're here tonight to consider industrial waste dump on I-10. No matter if you're from DeQuincy, Moss Bluff, Lake Charles, wherever you live, why do we put a waste dump on I-10? Years ago in the 70s, we had one at BFI in Sulphur. It was terrible. It was 250 feet going off the parish website from the south line of I-10, 250 foot from the foot of the landfill. This one has no setback. I assume it's 20 feet off the fence line. I don't know. That's a question for Mr. Brossett. I asked Mr. Brossett if he would consider moving to another location. I would not fight it if he'd move east, north, south, get away from the residents. There's thousands and thousands of acres owned by this family in that immediate area. This is spot zoning, classic case. You're going from agricultural to the other end of the spectrum to industrial. This opens up thousands and thousands of acres in that immediate area. It's not like you're going next door that's commercial and you're going to ask for industrial. This is all agricultural. thousands of acres. There's no adjoining light industrial. There's no adjoining commercial. The town of Vinton, Mayor Stinson, has fought over the years trying to get business. They've got some business along the interstate. I commend him. The Calcasieu Parish School Board passed a bond issue. They put ball fields, baseball, softball fields on I-10, a mile away from where this landfill is going to be. Sulphur, the parish and Sulphur have worked on these roads along the interstate. Past infrastructure, new roads, new growth. Everything's going east toward Pete Say. We're going toward Vinton. 50 years this is going to take to fill up. Sulphur and Vinton's going to merge. We're going to have a 520-acre landfill on I-10 in Calcasieu Parish. When you take your families on a trip, where else in the parish do you drive by a 520-acre landfill on the interstate? Nowhere. How come we can't do better? We can all do better. There's no reason for this. We promote tourism, we promote our way of life here, and we're going to do this to ourselves. There's ample acreage there to do it in another location. Please take a second look at this. That's all these residents want. I don't see it. In closing, this is a terrible location. It's a terrible plan. It's spot zoning at its best. Years ago, I had a mechanical metal company, a recycling company, wanted to meet and start a business in Toomey. The staff told me, we don't want that coming into the state, into our parish. I pulled the request. We don't want this coming into Calcasieu Parish. How can you look at your kids in the eye and say, tonight we went home and we passed a 520-acre landfill on I-10 in Calcasieu Parish? Where's the logic? Where is the logic?
Thank you, Mr. Ellender. This time, any questions or comments by the board? We'll call the applicant.
I got a question.
Mr. Coach Williams.
Maybe directing this to our staff. I'm trying to look for a definition here. I know we're in a heavy industrial area and been that way for years, and we continue to grow. And I keep hearing the word location. And then I look at this request, and it says solid waste landfill. Now, in my experience around here, I've been here, we got landfills all the way around me. But now, do we have a need for solid waste? That's my question. There seems to be there will be a need with all of this industrial growth we have around us.
Well, Mr. Williams, that was sort of the premise of my recommendation to you, was that based on the previous studies that have been done for this parish and the region, with all the industrial growth that is projected and the amount of growth in population that is being projected, that in my opinion, I felt like based and through the justification report that they presented to us, I felt like that there is a need or a long-term need for that. Also looked at, at this point we're transporting our waste either east out of our parish or west to Texas. And one of the main costs for transporting that waste is transportation, is the transportation of that. So my thought was, in having that located here in Calcasieu Parish, that reduces that amount of distance to have that waste transported. And that was another reason for my recommendation. There's a lot of factors in this. I realize that. That's why we're here tonight, for you to receive public input. As Jennifer mentioned, this is just the very first step of this. The DEQ process is very long and lengthy. And so I felt comfortable with our recommendation and with the stipulations that we placed on there to make that recommendation. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, and it didn't only answer it, you answered it, and He led me in another direction. I just noticed, I may be out of order, he just called me out of order, but our recent selection of a president, Donald Trump, I didn't want to call his name, which had become a favorite of mine. He wasn't a favorite at first, but now I guess it is. But I look at his economic impact that he's trying to develop. And it seems like some of this should rub off on us. Why would she take our tax money or use our tax money to go to some other area when we can be using it right here in Calcasieu Parish? With all the industry we got, I understand all of these residents, and I sympathize with them wholeheartedly. But if we're going to spend money to take the waste to Texas or some other parish when we could be using it here, I think it's something that we need to just consider. We may not like it, but I mean, it's something to consider. See? And everybody's looking for, well, let me say this. I'm not politicking, but Donald Trump won by targeting people who was in need. That's the people who elected him. He got away from these people. He went out there in the rural areas and all these people that were suffering, single parents, people who would make paychecks from one day, they didn't have nothing in the bank. These are the people that needs help. We got people right here needs help. We got a lot of homeless people. So we need to try to do everything we can to try to help people in our parish. So I don't know if that's in the right order or not, but you call me down. But that's just an opinion.
Appreciate your comments, Coach Williams. Any other questions or comments before we call the applicant back?
Can I sign?
No, sir.
Can I speak?
You gave your time to Mr. Atherton, sir, and there was 10 minutes of opposition, and the opposition had a full. Sir, please, no more comments from the audience. At this time, I'll call the applicant back up to address any comments brought forth by the opposition.
Just to address one or two, I think Mr. Ellender mentioned setbacks, and just to I guess to put it on the record is so there'll be a quite a long or a lengthy setback. We have 100 feet from the interstate to the property line, and then there's another 200 feet, from the property line where the first cell. So that's sort of the methodology behind having 500 acres is a very large buffer area. That buffer will consist of planted trees, a fence, and a berm. And so our commitment through the whole process with the landowners and whatnot is that the landfill, the height, together with the visual buffers, will not be visible by those passing on the interstate. In 2016, we have. Somebody mentioned a landfill back in the 1970s or whatnot. The regulation and what these engineering and aesthetically, how they're built today is completely different than it was 40 years ago. So, and we work hand in hand with the landowners that, quite honestly, they put stipulations on us that, we wanted it. It'll be the nicest one in the state, and we're going above and beyond.
No comments, please. We must retain order in this meeting. Thank you. No comments from the audience.
So, we just want to talk about the setbacks and the fact that we have to, it will not be visible from the road.
I have a question on the opposition talked about the location and the other options for this. What specifically made you choose this location for this site?
We did look at several other options, and there's unintended consequences if you move it to the north. Then you have the trucks that then have to exit the interstate. They have to go through a, possibly school zones or other areas, and then they go from a state road to a parish road, and then you create, a lot of other just, issues. So this is one turn off of the interstate. It's a state road, and it's about, 1.2, 1.3 miles to, the entrance to the property. So that was really one of the driving points. So we felt like we could address the visual aspects of it, the concerns were, what's it going to look like from the interstate, which we certainly understand, and so we've addressed that. But we think from a logistical standpoint, it makes a lot of sense from ingress and egress to have it at this particular location. If you move it further south or further north, then you have these trucks that are driving on roads that really weren't designed for a lot of this truck traffic. So that was really one of the main drivers of this particular site.
Question for the staff, which would also receive input from the applicant. The distance from the road, is that stated in this application? Did I hear about roughly 350 feet? You're 100 feet from the road to the property line, and then you
I think the DEQ setback is 200 to 250 feet from the property line.
Okay.
And so then the property line from the interstate is like 100 feet. So if you take the 100 feet plus...
So we're roughly looking at 350 feet from the road.
Correct.
According to this application.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
I've
Mr.
got a
Little.
question in regards to the concerns of some of the people here in regards to your trash. Will you be taking any trash from anywhere you can get it? Or will it be a Louisiana trash or Calcasieu Parish trash?
So
Can that be an answer you can provide us at this point?
Well, I think what typically DEQ defines a service area for any landfill. So during the needs analysis and during their process, they sort of define a service area. So, generally you go with those recommendations in general. But yeah, I mean, it's got to make, it's going to draw from, a given sort of, economic area when they take into account drive times and all the things that they factor in for every landfill that they permit.
I understood that you said at another meeting that it would be taking trash from Texas. That's what you informed us, that it would be taking trash from Texas.
It certainly could.
Yeah, so to answer your question.
Yeah, if we can capture dollars from there and bring them here, then that would be something we would.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir. You may be seated.
I have one. We all received, I don't know if you guys received the letter, but we all received a letter from the Gulf Coast Soil and Water Conservation District with their input on this. And so, do y'all have any comments on the letter that we received?
I haven't seen it. We haven't seen it.
Basically, it's saying that I don't know if you want to see it, but it's a concern, and
Yes, I think we all received that letter.
yeah.
I don't believe, just for clarification for the record, I don't believe that the staff received that. My first knowledge of it was here tonight, so.
Mr. Chairman, he mentioned the setbacks.
Mr. Ellender, I didn't call you up, and we've allowed the opposition. I apologize, but we've allowed the opposition, and the applicant has just been dismissed. If anyone on the board would like to ask Mr. Ellender or any of the opposition a pointed question, you may request to call them back up to the podium at this time. If you have Mr. Armitage.
I got one question for Mr. Ellender.
Mr. Ellender, if you come up to the podium.
Thank you, sir.
You said that if they would move it just a little further east, that you wouldn't be in opposition of it. What is a little further?
I asked them to make some type of concession to try to get it away from the town of Vinton and away from the interstate. These landowners, I talked with a landowner, and I talked with Mr. Chad Brossett, I believe his name is. And he seemed somewhat willing. The landowner did not. They were adamant this is where it should be. But I thought at least it could show some concession to you all as a board and the police jury if they would move it east and get it off the interstate either south or north. It would get it away from the residents.
So you're saying east, closer to Faubacker, or
Yes.
east? Okay, that's what I was wondering, what a little east meant. I didn't know if,
Nobody wants it in a perfect world, but I thought if we could give some concession to the town of Vinton and the residents southeast of Vinton, that at least surely they could look at another location. At least that could be
okay, that's
plausible.
all I wondered, what a little east was.
If I may, my question, Mr. Brossette brought up, he said that the property line is 100 foot south of the interstate. Either I don't understand that right, or he misstated it, because the south fence line of the interstate is the property line. There is no 100 foot between the interstate and the property line. The property line lies on the interstate. So I don't know what 100 foot he's talking about between the interstate and the property. There's a fence line there. The property is owned up to the south boundary of the interstate.
I think he was talking about the road itself, where you drive.
Pavement.
The pavement. Yes, where he.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood.
Understood what he was saying on
Yeah,
that aspect.
When I
Thank
asked
you.
the question, it was directly the road, the pavement.
Right, the pavement itself. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Ellender.
Thank you.
If the applicant would like to address any of the concerns, Mr. Brussi, you were,
No,
okay.
we did. We deferred for 30 days. We looked at, and like I said, there's just unintended consequences of moving it a little this way or a little that way, and so we feel confident this is the most advantageous location for the project.
Okay. Thank you. You may be seated. Mr. Little.
I feel like just about everyone in Calcasieu Parish realizes that this waste dump is something that's coming in the future. It's going to happen. I personally do not feel this is the place for it to happen. The city of Vinton is doing the same thing as everyone else. They're trying to take advantage of this economic boom that we're having. I did get a note from the city council. That's why no one from the city council is here tonight, because that's their meeting night is tonight. But Bliss Bayard sent word that the municipality will be most adversely affected by this project and just passed a resolution officially opposing the Gum Island landfill project. The project is about 2 miles from downtown Vinton. We've got predominantly southeast winds, south winds. There's gases, and I feel that what we have in place with DEQ and all our governing bodies, we have to believe that they're going to take care of us. If not, then we're lost in this world. Those people are going to do what's got to be done to make it safe for us. But this landfill, where it's going to be, is not going to be, it's going to be adversely affecting the people in that area. We can move it further east, we can move it further south. We have opened up what we call them bar pits. Over 900-acre bar pits have been opened up in Calcasieu Parish. At some point in time, we need to do something with them. But this landfill, where it's going, is not going to be the best thing for Calcasieu Parish. We've got the biggest and the best tourist bureau in the country. We're spending $5, $6, $10 million on a welcome center 4 miles down the road on our Interstate 10. We don't need people coming into the state with the landfill right on the interstate. If you move it 3 or 4 miles, please.
There's no comments, please.
If we move this thing 3 or 4 miles down the road next to Faubacker, you're a mile off the interstate. So, there's some ways and means to get around it. I don't think it's not a necessity. It's not where it is where it needs to be.
Ms. Dickerson?
Said it beautifully.
All right. Any other questions, comments by the board? Ms. Christie, roll call vote.
Mr. Chairman, you do have, I don't know if y'all, Mr. Atherton did mention that y'all had these other conditions.
Okay.
I don't know if y'all considered those or not. I just want to make sure y'all are aware of that.
If anyone has reviewed Mr. Atherton's
You'd need a
stipulations or additional stipulations, conditions, and would like to move to add that as additional stipulations, you may do so at this time. No one? All right. If there's no more discussion, no more questions or comments by the board, roll call vote, please, Ms. Christie.
Ms. Brown?
No.
Ms. Felicia?
No.
Mr. Williams?
No.
No.
Mr. Armitage?
No.
Ms. Dickerson?
No.
Mr. Little?
No?
I have 7 against and 1 recusal.
Item 27 fails. We'll take a brief recess to clear the room. Please exit swiftly and keep your conversation once you clear the room. Thank you. Please exit the room as soon as possible. Please exit the room as soon as possible. No, I don't think they can hear me. I think I need a megaphone.
Are you speaking?
Okay, moving on to item 28. Advised that the police jury took the following action on October 20th, 2016 with reference to the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Board from the October 18th, 2016 meeting. Applicant Jackson, located at East Burton Street, Planning and Zoning Board passed and the police jury upheld. Applicant Lewis, location Ryan Road, Planning and Zoning Board passed, police jury upheld. Applicant Broussard at Curry Drive, Pizza Road, Planning and Zoning Board failed, and police jury action withdrawn. Applicant Hurd at West Tank Farm Road, Planning and Zoning Board withdrew, and no action by the police jury. Applicant Nison's Landing at location Gulf Highway, Planning and Zoning Board deferred, and the police jury upheld. Applicant Goodman on Goodman Road, Planning and Zoning Board passed, police jury upheld. Talco 2 applicant at East Napoleon Street, Planning and Zoning Board passed, and the police jury upheld. Lavoy Land applicant at Common Street, Planning and Zoning Board passed, and the police jury upheld. Applicant Old Penn at Highway 108 West, Planning and Zoning Board deferred, and the police jury upheld. Item 29, advised that the next regularly scheduled Planning and Zoning Board meeting will be held on Tuesday, December 13th, 2016, in the police jury meeting room. Mr. West Crane.
Go ahead. I just have an announcement.
Okay, I was about to adjourn, so you better, if you want to.
I was just going to remind y'all, we have our elections again next month. So for chair and vice chair.
Sure.
So just remember that.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
I think they're doing a great job.
Mr. Chairman, before you dismiss, I'd like to apologize to this board and the staff for my political analysis, but I just
Hey,
We appreciate it.
We understood what you're saying.
At the end, you tied it into the agenda item, so. I was worried before you started saying you were going way around. But you reined it back in, Coach.
Good job.
And before we dismiss, I'd like to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, all the people of the Calhoun Parish and all fine Planning and Zoning Board members and the staff. Need a motion to adjourn by Mr. Smith, second by Ms. Alicia.
Yeah.
We are adjourned.
Oh.
Happy Thanksgiving.